बहुत धन्यवाद। और ये सौभाग्य कि जो है कि मुझे मौका मिला आदरणीय प्रोफेसर धीरेन्द्र कुमार तिवारी जी खड़गपुर आपसे मिलने का मौका मिला है उस कई बार। और आपकी जो व्यक्तित्व है और जो ज्ञान है जो सृजन आज हमने अनुभव किया है, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद चोपड़ा जी को कि ये मौका दिया मुझे। और पानीग्रही एंड यहाँ उपस्थित मेरे बड़े भाई संतोष कुमार शुक्ल जी, JNU सेंटर फॉर स्कूल फॉर संस्कृत इंडिक से पामिला जी और जो विद्वान गण यहाँ उपस्थित हैं सबको प्रणाम मेरी तरफ से। और जैसा कि मैंने पहले भी कहा कि थोड़ी सी मुझे लग रहा है कि कुछ प्रिंटिंग मिस्टेक्स हुई है कि वहाँ वो कीनोट स्पीच की जगह मेरा नाम दिया हुआ है, जहाँ पर कि इतने बड़े बड़े विद्वान हैं तो मैं तो मुझे कुछ आता है नहीं, मैं तो ढूंढता है जो है ICSR है, इसलिए मौका मिला है तो ICSR की वजह से मैं हूँ। और मेरे ख्याल से मेरे गुरु मेरे बाद प्रोफेसर आदरणीय कपिल कपूर जी का व्याख्यान है, तो मेरे गुरु रहे हैं। मैं मूलतः अंग्रेजी का शिक्षक प्रोफेसर हूँ JNU में, तो मेरे गुरु मेरे बाद हैं, तो जो भी मेरे से जो त्रुटि होगी वो गुरु की जो है आशीष से संपूर्ण होगा। हाँ, तो उनकी ही दृष्टि दिशा से कुछ पढ़ा है एस्थेटिक्स फिलोसफी में। और सही मानों में जो बीज व्यक्तित्व जो स्पीच है वो तो प्रोफेसर चोपड़ा जी ने ही ऑलरेडी जो है किया है, और जो एक सेल्फ की जो उन्होंने बात की भारतीय परंपरा में जो है। हाँ, सोशल साइंस ICSR जो है इस बात पे काफी हमारा जोर है कि सोशल साइंस रिसर्च, हार्ड साइंस रिसर्च और नेचुरल साइंस रिसर्च और ह्यूमैनिटीज रिसर्च, ह्यूमन साइंस रिसर्च को हाउ डू वी ब्रिंग टुगेदर। Recently, I was at the UNESCO conference on ethics of artificial intelligence in Slovenia and participated from and मैडम आपको बहुत प्रणाम, आप मैंने जो बहुत आपका आशीर्वाद लेता है। And one of the concerns, of course, was with the massive sort of disruptions that artificial intelligence is going to cause, serious concerns, and how research which integrates natural sciences, engineering, social sciences, and human sciences, because one of the primary questions for us in the 21st century is being human, of course, how to be human in the 21st century with all sorts of violence of all kinds, whether it's climate crisis or human-created violence. And therefore, it's essential for us at ICSR that we work together, and I'm very happy therefore that I'm here, and we are thinking about categories, concepts and categories from the Indian tradition as an answer. I would not like to call it the alternative models, but models rather. So not alternative to something which has existed for long in the Western tradition. This is not the topic to talk about AI, but I'm sure the bright minds that we have here. I think Indian knowledge system or Indian traditions, of course, has a great answer to some of the challenges that AI poses, especially in terms of fear that the machine or the computer or artificially created intelligence would overtake the cognitive possibilities and potentials of human mind. When we have somebody like Panini, Astudhyayi, all of us know who could have conceptualized and reduced entire universe of Sanskrit language into 937 odd sutras, so we have great possibilities to develop a system that somehow supports us in view of the great challenge that we face there. Now, when it comes to social work, and I'm just sharing my bits of knowledge of this, not call it knowledge, but knowledge to wo hai jo aapne kaha is samay. Well, social work, as you know, I mean, its history is only 19th century, 17th, 18th, 19th century, 18th century Enlightenment, obviously. And the fact that social progress, science, modernity, and at the same time a great deal of poverty, obviously, machines and science and progress, that also industries, factories, and then poverty. And therefore there is a responsibility to kind of attend to the poor, and therefore social work actually evolves as a discipline. The word work is also very limited. The work involves labor. At most, the English word work would communicate craft. At most, it would communicate craft. Sevā is entirely different. It's entirely different. So it cannot be translated. It doesn't have a translation. As punya, as the other day, of course, Jambu Shastriji was saying in another context, punya doesn't have a translation in the English language. Now, we in the tradition, in the Indian tradition, some of the great names and their, for instance, Guru Nanak Ji, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and then Mahatma Buddha, of course, Sri Krishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of course, Adi Shankaracharya, Swami Vivekananda, Ramakrishna, the great names of it. They are not simply names, but their lives, their ideas, their practices, social practices, their devotion to humanity at large, obviously. I've only read very limited knowledge, but the first meeting that Swami Vivekananda, of course, had with Ramakrishna, and the great enlightenment that you will feel with somebody who seems to be pretty kind of illiterate, a great power in the simplicity of words. In our tradition, Shabd is, of course, Shabd is not word in our tradition, right? Shabd is manifestation of Brahma, the reality. And therefore there is a difference in the Indian tradition, Shabd which is empirical and Shabd that which cannot be uttered in syllables or words and syntaxes. That Shabd only few, those who realize the self as you have described, can utter. Those who have the bhava of seva, only those have that kind of, I must say, the lack of word, of course, the potential to create an ambience where another person could become a participant, as luminary as Swami Vivekananda, to participate in the common goal of eradicating poverty and suffering. Gautam Buddha, of course. There are numerous examples. So it's a high time that we would have thought about categories from Indian thought system for social work. As in ICSSR, we have also taken up this objective to, in fact, as Prof. Tiwari was rightly stressing, the centrality of Indian knowledge system. Centrality is again not the right word to use here, but the importance of Indian knowledge systems in constructing and coming up with categories and concepts and categories of knowledge, especially in social sciences and human sciences. There are innumerable examples. One name which comes to me, of course, is I think the scholars would know here, Schrödinger, of course, Edwin Schrödinger, the quantum physicist. For all his life, he was fascinated with resolving the riddle that Advaita Vedanta, with Prof. with Adi Shankaracharya's, of course, commentary on the Upanishads, on the relation of matter and energy. There's so much in the Indian knowledge system, but somehow there has been an attitude, obviously, which has created an ambience of perception, especially in the educated class, that nothing exists, of course, worthwhile of intellection. Therefore, it's a welcome move. Now, with my limited understanding, when social work involves a great deal of course, social therapy, we are in times of where mental health has become post-pandemic, and during pandemic, post-pandemic, an important global concern. A civilization which, in fact, has rested, which has thought so deeply about bhavas. Even you take the example of performance of course, Nakshatra, for instance, 50 bhavas, and if you look at the Vyabhichari bhavas, the number goes up and up and up. That there's a great deal of understanding as to how the way these have been conceptualized can become theories, of course, where social work, departments obviously, or the intellectuals and researchers think about how some of those conceptualizations of bhavas and the manifestations can be used as theories or framework to study how to deal with, and of course there are a lot of people who are in fact scholars who are deeply interested in the field of course neuroscience and are not an expert obviously. I've read a few of course with secondary sources, but I'm sure there are experts here in the sciences who have taken this forward and in philosophy. Now when we and that's why Professor Risha Chopra ji in fact set the theme and the tone and the, I must say, the intellectual content of this conference by actually by talking about a self, which is a niṣkāma sevā. Niṣkāma sevā, and that's my humble, of course, presentation. Without, as I said, I'm overawed by the presence of scholars, of course. In Natya Shastra, Anubhava is a category, of course. Anubhava is a category. And of course, Abhinay, of course, is a category. But Anubhava, gestures themselves, of course. And there is a term that, of course, they uses for the Satvik Bhava. Satvik Bhava. Satvik Bhava means, of course, the consciousness, if we can find some manifestation on a face without perceptible exertion of will. That not all actors can do that. Not all human beings have that ability. So by merely looking at the faces of the people here, I can actually pretty well have an understanding of the deep knowledge and that they have. Now, it is a niṣkāma sevā, and Professor Tiwari was saying that can sevā be niṣkāma? That's a question that he can there be a desireless sevā? Of course, we all know the whole category of niṣkāma sevā comes from niṣkāma karma is how the conversation, the great dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna, especially in the chapter 3rd, where we have the Karma Yoga. And therefore the question arises, I mean, in what sense does it talk about niṣkāma sevā, niṣkāma karma? In what sense is it niṣkāma? So niṣkāma and karma and sevā, there's three major categories that we have. Karma, of course, is a category that comes in all philosophical discourses, all philosophical systems, right? Whether it's the Buddha, of course, whether it's a Jaina, whether it's a Sikh Sampradaya, it comes in all systems. And of course, the fact that there can be non-attachment. When we're talking of broadly, when we say niṣkāma sevā, we distinguish it from sevā that is motivated. Sevā is also motivated. So if I give something to some people, and if I may have political motivation that I need support, obviously, I could have several kinds of motivation. There could be religious motivation. There I am doing sevā, you accept me. I am a Shaivite, so you become a Shaivite. I am helping you. You are a poor person. I am attending you. And what do you expect back from you? That you accept my creed, you accept my religion. That's also sevā. That's a sevā. But there's a difference, of course. That is motivated. There is some motivation that that I devote myself to you, but you accept whether it is taught, whether it is communicated directly or is communicated indirectly. There will be indirect portion, obviously. So if this sevā leads you to a realization of a certain regard. Now that cannot be niṣkāma. That's motivated. And therefore when we talk niṣkāma sevā, we are talking of altogether different philosophy. I'm not saying that the first one would not negate it, obviously, because people are getting served after all, but then sevā is not the right word for it. I'm not saying that obviously everybody has a right to choose any path, obviously. No stopping that, but that cannot be service. Now, service is again not a translation of sevā. Now, when a sevā has an understanding of who I am, it's central to that understanding, who I am. Krishna, of course, Sri Krishna, when he talks about niṣkāma sevā, my limited understanding, what I see is that he talks that it's both attachment and aversion. Attachment and aversion are both negative. Like Like obviously with aversion, you cannot go ahead and do the seva. Right? You cannot renounce the action, but for an action there should be some kind of an inclination towards an action. What determines that action? What determines that action is what the Shanti Parva says. In the Shanti Parva, of course, Yudhishthira being addressed by Bhishma, that what is truth? It is truth that when guides seva is niṣkāma seva. And truth, of course, as you know, satya is not a simple concept. When Professor Chopra was talking about self, and that comes also in Chandogya Upanishad, obviously, Prajapati, Indra, and Hiroshima, that dialogue, that can self be equated with the body, can self be equated with the dream, self cannot be equated with the body. One of the great, intellectual, interventions in Western philosophy that of René Descartes, obviously, 1637 discourse on method, which comes to the idea, I think, therefore I am. Cogito sum, I think, therefore I am. So there is a separation of mind and matter. I am a thinking being, and there is a matter. There is a matter that is there to be known, using methods, of course, of knowledge, and to be exploited. That is one dhara, that there is a distinction between mind and matter. That's what it is. This is another dhara, of course, when in all many of our systems, including the Bodh philosophy, the mana, of course, is one of the senses of it. Therefore, there is no distinction between mind and matter here. And that is why we have Panchakosha, right? Panchakosha, Panchabhuta, the Tanamatras, in all streams of knowledge, the Tanamatras, obviously. So that which constitutes the universe, whether in the Sankhya system or the Purusha Prakriti, that which constitutes the universe, that which constitutes each object of universe, is the same that constitutes the Antahkarana, is the same that constitutes the Mana, Buddhi, Chitta, and senses, of course. And of course, the Dhananjay, of course, is the one that we're talking about, that Purusha. Now, with that understanding, of course, if in Sankhya all matter is constituted the same components, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, that constitutes the human empirical self, then there is no division as such. The division is between that self which Professor Chopra was talking about. Now, interestingly, Descartes, of course, begins with the same kind of intellection. That all exists, but it exists for what? What is the ground of existence? But for him, the ground of existence is the empirical self, is a mind. For us, the ground of existence is not the empirical mind. The ground of existence is that supreme consciousness, which of course, which has a pratibimba in all of us, our individual consciousness. Now, if that is so, if it is to realize that it is the immanence of truth, of course, it's the immanence of self, that self, which integrates all of us, not only humans but also non-humans. That is Upanishad, of course, is a self that is in an ant, is also in the elephant, is also in me, and also in everybody. The whole concept of rasa in aesthetics is built on that. That integration, equanimity, unity, of course. If that is a crux, that's why Shanti Parva, of course, Yudhishthira is fed by Bhishma, that the welfare of all is the ultimate truth. It's the ultimate truth. And therefore that needs to be followed. Bhagavan Buddha, of course, we all know, right? All that he had, right? One experience of death, obviously, and suffering, identifies suffering to be the whole experience, social experience, right? And therefore is on the path of Loka Samudaya, right? That if there is suffering, then there is the cessation of suffering is also possible. There is a path to cessation of suffering. There is a cause of suffering. What an alternative model we have. It is suffering, and we're talking of social cohesion, obviously. Finishing the point on niṣkāma karma is Shankara later on, where he comes to the concept of Hiranya Garbha, which he uses in context of Nachiketa. And there, in another, of course, comment to another Upanishad, he comes with the term Satyakama. Again, Satyakama. Somebody who has overcome the desire of the material world, so not to be understood in simple sense. Material is existence, but whose desire, there is a desire to overcome this desire, of course. That has to be understood differently, and that's when he becomes Satyakama. Therefore, Shankara calls it Satyakama there in that commentary. Now, that is what leads us to thinking across all Indic systems. Because this niṣkāma is not possible without the perfection of the self that Gautama Buddha talks about, paramita that he talks about. In all systems, Bodhisattva, of course, the whole experience of Bodhisattva is somebody who is enlightened, somebody who knows the dependent origination. Dependent origination is a wonderful concept. That can be used in social sciences. Of course, there's a causality, dependent origination, that something comes out of something. There's always a causality. But the fact that if one is serving particular cases, obviously, if you go by what the Buddha proposes is that if you look at the cause of it, if the cause of suffering, so it could be of any kind, obviously, if the cause of suffering is resolved, then suffering ends. What I'm seeking to say is that across all systems, we talk about the Jain system, obviously, right? Ahimsa is primarily ahimsa. It's there in all other systems also. In Jaina, it's most fundamental, obviously, that you cannot cut trees, obviously, right? You cannot stop flowing water, right? Absolute non-violence, right? That is the crux of relating the self with the social. Primarily, when we look at the limitation of the empirical self in the Indian thought, we conceptualize self as social. That is the conceptualization, and it is based on certain principles of human character, human accomplishments. Truthfulness, as I said, is important. There are several narratives in the Jatakas, obviously. Several narratives. A narrative of quail, for instance. Young quail cannot fly. Fire engulfs all where every being has fled. A young quail has only the power of truth, of uttering the truth. Courage from Jatayu. Jatayu had no power against Ravana. He had no power against Ravana. He was not at all equal. He could have simply watched Ravana taking Sita away, and if he was a person perhaps we can tell that okay, I mean well that Ravana is taking Sita. I've seen it, but I'll do my job because I'm not equal to Ravana. So let me wait. If somebody comes, I'll report that it's been taken. But that courage, of course, the courage to do well, to serve others. Utsaha also comes, of course, in the Buddhist thought. Also, utsaha comes, energy, of course. Energy, not the right translation, of course. To do well, Jatayu, Abhimanyu. We have several examples of, obviously, to sacrifice oneself for others. We talk of Sikh Sampradaya. We have in the post-independence India, we have innumerous stories of the sacrifices which the Sikh soldiers have made. Apart from other soldiers, of course, this absolute sacrifice, right? That comes with utsaha. What I'm trying to say is that niṣkāma sevā is underlined by certain concepts of relation between the self, the empirical self, and the world out there, and that relationship based on these 10 perfections that Gautama Buddha talks about. Based on these perfections, that sense of niṣkāma sevā is accomplished. That's the point that I'm trying to say. That is why in many of the discourses, dharma dharma becomes a very integral concept of dharma as well as seva. As well as seva. The what is my dharma? It was Jatayu's dharma. It was even Karna dharma. Karna knows when Indra comes that give me your, what do you call, kavach, exactly, armor. Karna pretty well knows that he's going to die, he will be dead without this. But of course, charity is the game, one of the principles that drives seva. Charity is a value ingrained in the building up of human character, in all Indian systems, of course. Karna is driven by that. Therefore, you've asked me, I'll give you that particular point of time. You've asked me, without thought of, and that's what Krishna also says in Gita, charity, of course, which is done without expectation and is done at a proper time and place. Not कि आज आप मुझे you ask me something and say ठीक है देना तो चाहिए लेकिन problem है एक महीने बाद सोचते हैं दे सकते हैं दे देंगे, but the person requires at that particular time. Therefore, Krishna says charity is of course something that you do give, of course, without thought of what you would expect at a proper time and place. That's what Karna does. Now, this may be one issue that we get from, especially in the Indian traditions, is that people say, well, these are all stories basically, and therefore, the stories, and it's good to hear. But we're listening to the whole story of Kanhaiya ji and how Professor Chopra was saying. The stories, because he said primarily it was an oral tradition, and orality was not there an alternate to writing, because Pandit himself mentions lipping, so writing was there. But orality is a mode to construct knowledge and disseminate knowledge and store knowledge. There are very different traditions that followed it. And therefore all oral narratives and discourses are epistemologies, are methods of constructing knowledge. Each of these stories you will find categories of thought, categories of thinking, critical thinking. And that's why these narratives are important to be studied, to be researched on, and to be, when we talk of, let's say, in ICSR, when I say that social science research methodologies need to be relooked. In Africa, there's been a great attempt that all the methodologies have come from the West. Methodologies and ideas also have historical evolution context. Now, how could we apply methods that have evolved somewhere else and study, let's say, some Janjatiya society in India, in the Northeast, for example? So, there are two options. One, of course, is that living practices of people have those categories. Living practices of people have in their narratives categories all the intellectual tradition that we have. And the subject that you have chosen, for instance, is extremely important and relevant, and I'm sure that in the innumerable example, for instance, in the Sikh tradition, the whole concept of langar, of course, I think it started with Dhananjay itself, and Nandal Dev, and then Guru Angad Dev, and how sharing food, for instance, or sharing whatever you have, whatever you earn. Again charity, sharing. So in all Indic systems, of course, you find that, of course, there are some now, discourses which say, no, this is different, or that is different, therefore there's nothing to do with the continuity. The problem is, you look at the categories and say, where is the difference? So there are voices, of course, because you see, one of the problems, and that's how it happens. So I think there is a time to rethink about this. Two ways in which we can rethink, social science, humanities, of course, theories or methodologies is by looking at our own traditions and intellectual text, obviously. And second, of course, going to people and do empirical studies and draw categories from there. And I think, sure, as far as this theme is concerned, I'm sure we will come with the wonderful, enlightening and very relevant deliberations, and look forward to participating and reading them, studying them. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you.